We begin this morning with a Fox News alert. The U.S. now braces for retaliation from Iran after carrying out Operation Midnight Hammer, which has severely damaged their key nuclear facilities. U.S. bases across the Middle East are on high alert as Iran vows to respond. And anti-American protesters take over the streets of Tehran, but President Trump isn't ruling out potential regime change in the nation. You are watching Fox and Friends First. On this Monday morning, I'm Carly Shimkus.
And I am Todd Pyro. We have live team coverage this morning. Madeleine Rivera in Washington with President Trump's plans for today. And former U.S. Marine Mark Geist here to explain the tactics used by the U.S. to carry out this operation. But first, let's go to Mike Tobin, live on the ground in Tel Aviv as sirens blare across Israel right now. Mike.
And Todd and Carly, just moments ago, we got the all clear as waves of missiles were inbound from Iran to the north and really from the north to the south of Israel. We've got the reports of one rocket that made impact about halfway between here in Tel Aviv and the Gaza Strip. We're waiting for details on that. Meantime, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has been explaining about the timing of the attack. The Prime Minister explained that Iran had enough uranium enriched just below weapons grade to make about 10 bombs. And he says after Hezbollah Secretary General Hassan Nasrallah was killed, Iran began a desperate rush to build that bomb, so Israel had to act.
They had enough of that, 9 or 10 bombs worth of enriched uranium, but they needed to make the bomb itself. And the bomb itself they rushed to do right after the collapse of the terror axis and the removal of Nasrallah. Therefore, we had to act.
The Director General of the International Atomic Energy Agency says the enriched uranium was not destroyed in the U.S. strike. Iran had moved it ahead of time. Speaking to the UN Security Council, Rafael Grossi continues to push for negotiation as a means to stop Iran from acquiring a nuclear bomb.
We have a window of opportunity to return to dialogue and diplomacy. If that window closes, violence and destruction could reach unthinkable levels, and the global non-proliferation regime, as we know it, could crumble and fall.
Now, Grossi does not disagree with President Trump's claim that substantial damage was done to Iran's nuclear sites. The president posted on Truth Social, the biggest damage took place far below ground, level, bullseye. Grossi noted that the centrifuges are extremely fragile and they spin very fast. Something as simple as a power outage can cause them to break. Todd and Carly?
Yeah, Mike, yesterday, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said that Israel is very, very close to completing its goals in Iran. So from an Israeli perspective, what does completing their mission look like and how much longer will it take to get there?
Well, they talk about three different prongs of notice, three different points that Israel is trying to accomplish. First would be the prevention of ballistic missiles and the firing on Israel. The second would be destruction of the nuclear program. And then they say destruction of Iran's ambitions to end the state of Israel. It really seems that that third one is based on the first two. And Israel does say substantial damage has been done to the nuclear program, certainly set them back. And they say upwards of 50% of the ballistic missile program has been destroyed. Carly?
Mike Tobin, live for us in Tel Aviv. Mike, thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
President Trump expected to meet with his national security team at 1 p.m. Eastern time today to discuss the next steps in Iran.
Madeleine Rivera joins us live from Washington with all the details. Maddie, hello.
Good morning, Todd and Carly. Vice President J.D. Vance maintains the administration has not closed the door to diplomacy. Vance says this is a moment to actually reset the relationship with Iran because before the strikes, Iran was stonewalling the president, which is why he approved the strikes in the first place.
If you back up a little bit, we engaged in this diplomatic process. I think that he decided probably by mid-May that this process was not going anywhere, and so he decided to issue some private ultimatums to the Iranians. And then eventually, of course, we decided to destroy the Fordo nuclear facility and some of these other facilities ourselves.
As for the end goal here, Vance says they don't want a regime change. Secretary of State Marco Rubio said the same thing, that they're focusing simply on eliminating Iran's ability to have a nuclear weapon.
If what they want is a country that has a nuclear energy program, they can have that. I mean, many countries around the world. I don't like the regime, but we're not into the regime change business here. We're into the safety and security of the United States business. So that's a choice they'll have to make. I hope they're being rational in their decision making. But I think the most important thing I hope they realize is the game is up.
But in a turnaround, the president did not rule out the possibility of a regime change, saying in a Truth Social post, it's not politically correct to use the term regime change, but if the current Iranian regime is unable to make Iran great again, why wouldn't there be a regime change? MIGA. Iran says they're not interested in diplomacy at this point. The U.S. warning Iran against retaliation, saying it has capabilities Iran has not yet seen. Carly and Todd.
Madeleine Rivera, live for us in Washington. Maddie, thank you. Let's bring in former United States Marine and member of the annex security team that fought the Battle of Benghazi, Mark Geist. Mike, good morning to you. So before this strike, analysts were talking about this mission in terms of one B-2 flying over one nuclear site with 2 bunker busters on board. And in reality, this mission included 7 B-2s, 14 bunker busters, 30 Tomahawk missiles, and 3 nuclear sites. So the size and scope of this is incredible. It's been dubbed Operation Midnight Hammer. So take us inside this. What goes into the planning of a mission like this, and what stood out to you in terms of the mission itself?
I think one of the biggest things is in Washington, especially with the time that we had leading up to this, the security around this operation did not get leaked whatsoever. That's commendable to the administration and to the planning phase of this. Outside of that, the planning phase has probably been ongoing for the last 30 to 60 days since President Trump started these negotiations and gave the diplomatic, I wouldn't say threats, but he put in the known KPIs in there to ensure that they understood what was going to happen when he gave the number of days of about 60 days to respond on the diplomatic side.
Look, you're right. There wasn't a lot of talk in Washington about this beforehand. But you know what else really stood out to me about this mission? There wasn't a lot of talk while they were in the air. And to me, that is one of the most remarkable aspects of this. Air Force vet, Congressman August Pfluger, I think had the most colorful description of this mission and what happened in the air that I think I've ever heard. Take a listen to the congressman.
Think about you and your wife trying to meet up in Paris at a restaurant. 7:30 reservations, plus or minus a minute. Don't be early, don't be late. But you have 125 other guests that also have that same thing without cell phones. So the difficulty starts with just getting to the right place at the right time, and then you have to carry out the mission.
Mark, how? How did they do this without communication?
Well, there's always some type of communication, and it is all encrypted, that they can still maintain that, especially within the military structure itself. And that planning and that execution of what they did with the number of planes, I think surprised a lot of people, and I think that was necessary. It was a one-time chance to go after these nuclear facilities and to ensure that we stop them from being able to have a nuclear bomb.
Yeah, there were also deception tactics used. Here's Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Dan Raisin-Kane, talking about that. Watch this.
The U.S. employed several deception tactics, including decoys, as the 4th and 5th generation aircraft pushed out in front of the strike package at high altitude and high speed, sweeping in front of the package for enemy fighters and surface-to-air missile threats.
I mean, truly remarkable. Dive into that a little bit for us. There were also B-2s taking off from Missouri and flying west towards the Pacific, which also turned out to be a ruse.
Yeah, it did. And, those are the tactics of warfare. We could go as far back as Sun Tzu and look at how that is and what they recommend then. And, President Trump, I think, is a study of history and a study of military history. And between that and all his advisors, I think they came up with a great plan.
Mark, we had a guest on the weekend show that said, yes, all the attention is going to be paid to the bombers themselves who dropped the payload, and rightly so. It is a remarkable mission, but this guest also said refueling in flight is one of the toughest parts of this mission. It is extremely difficult. Can you give us a little insight as to what makes it so difficult to refuel these planes, these bombers in flight?
Well, I would say anybody who's flown commercial up at high altitudes know that, it's not always a smooth ride. And when you're looking at taking two aircraft traveling the speeds that they are, in the conditions that they are, and you're trying to basically it's a 2 foot by 2 foot area that you are trying to bring that nozzle into and make connection to that other aircraft. And when doing that, there's so many things that can go wrong. And it is to the guys and gals out there that were doing this, that were behind the scenes, that will never be known, we got to give them kudos and a thumbs up to all that they did to help this mission become successful.
Amen to that. So what do you think the plane ride, Mark, was like back for them? We're talking about world-class professionals here, but after completing a mission like this and it being a successful one at that, the human side must also take over a bit.
It does. I mean, they are professional, and I can tell you, until they left Iranian airspace, and most likely until they get landed, there were limited celebration. It was once they got on the ground and things were all safe and they knew that everyone was back home, that I'm sure there was some back patting and some great celebrations going on.
Yeah, don't celebrate before you cross the end zone. I'd imagine, in light of your experience in Benghazi, that you are a student of history. Can you put these strikes in the context of other major events in history? In other words, when our kids, Carly and my kids, read about this in a history book in 20 years, what are they going to be comparing these strikes to?
These strikes are compared to, any of the major military operations that we have encountered since the founding of this country, especially modern warfare since World War II. You have all of the different campaigns, Campaign Overlord, going into Sicily, going North Africa campaign, and going into these newer, these areas that no one ever thought the American public or the American military could do that. And this one is even bigger because of the nature that is behind it. I mean, we're talking about nuclear armament of a country that has a deep hatred, or at least, and not the people, I'm talking about the regime, has a deep hatred of America and everything we stand for. And they've used their proxies, Hezbollah and Yemen and the Houthis, to attack us continually, and it's been increased. And this is something that is going to change that.
Well, more than 125 U.S. aircraft took part in this mission, and they got the job done. We are so grateful for them and for your service as well. Mark Geist, thank you for joining us this morning.
I'm Steve Doocy. I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.